The sun beats down on the limestone hills of Bethany. A crowd has gathered outside a cave. You can hear the sound of the professional mourners. And that is true. He does. But if you look closer at the specific Greek words the eyewitnesses chose to write down, the answer waits on Thursday night in the dark, under the ancient olive trees, where the water is about to turn to blood. We leave the sunlit streets of the capital and descend into the absolute isolation of Thursday night. The location is an olive grove on the Mount of Olives called Gethsemane, which literally translates to the oil press. It is a place designed for crushing. The gospel accounts tell us that Jesus falls to the cold, damp soil, separated from his closest friends by only a stone's throw. He is under a psychological pressure so severe that the capillaries in his sweat glands rupture, mixing blood with the heavy perspiration on his forehead. We usually read this scene as a moment of profound hesitation. A human man begging for a way out of the torture he knows is coming. The next morning, but decades later, an unnamed author writing to a group of Hebrew Christians reveals a detail about this night that changes the entire scope of what was happening in the dark. The disciples could not have recorded this detail. They were asleep. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7 says, "During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save him from death." The Greek word used for fervent cries is krauge. It does not mean a loud voice, at the exact sequence of events. And at the other two times this happens, you start to see a much larger, much more dangerous picture. It means a scream. It is the visceral, uncontained shrieking of a person being torn apart from the inside. It is the sound of absolute agony. The progression is now completely terrifying. At the tomb of a friend, he wept silently. Over the rebellion of a city, he wailed aloud. But here, pressed into the dirt of the garden, he screams through his tears. We have to understand what he is looking at. In Bethany, he was looking at the physical consequence of death on one family. In Jerusalem, he was looking at the historical consequence of rebellion on one nation. But in Gethsemane, he is staring into a cup that contains the concentrated, toxic rebellion of the entire human race across all of time. Every act of violence, every betrayal, every abused child, every shattered vow, every ounce of the curse that has infected the cosmos since Eden, he is about to swallow it whole. The struggle in the garden is not a human flinching at the sight of wood and nails. It is the spiritual asphyxiation of the author of life, choosing to inhale death. He screams because the holy perfection of his nature is violently repulsed by the sin he is actively absorbing. The tears that fall into the bloody soil are the ultimate expression of grief, not just for what he is about to endure, but for the devastating cost of what humanity has done to itself. He weeps because the cage, this is not a display of passive sympathy. It is a confrontation. There are exactly 3 recorded moments in the texts where the creator of cannot be unlocked from the outside. The only way to break the mechanism of death is to let it close its jaws around him. The guards arrive, the torches cut through the dark, the tears stop, and they will not return. But when you lay these 3 moments side by side, the silent tears, the loud wail, and the screaming agony, a pattern emerges that completely reframes the way God interacts with the brokenness of the world. A stone rolls shut in Bethany. A sister cries in the dirt. Jesus weeps silently. A crowd shouts for revolution. The temple shines white in the sun. Jesus wails aloud. The olive press waits in the dark. The cold ground absorbs blood. Jesus screams in agony. Friend, city, world. The radius expands. The emotional weight compounds. The vocal response escalates. When you pull back and look at these 3 moments together, the traditional image of a mild, passively sad Jesus shatters completely. He is not weeping because he has lost control. He is weeping because he is taking it back. The grief is not a polite expression of sympathy. It is a battle cry. Look at the physical trajectory of his feet in all 3 scenes. The smell of decay hits the hot air in Bethany. He does not retreat. He commands the stone to move. The roar of a volatile mob shakes the Kidron Valley. The universe weeps in human skin. 3 distinct scenes. And a progression of original language that moves from a silent shedding of tears to a "he does not turn around." He rides down the slope directly into the political crosshairs. The torches of the arrest party pierce the dark of the olive grove. He does not run. He stands up, wakes his friends, and walks toward the swords. In every instance, the tears do not paralyze him. They propel him. We tend to view crying as a symptom of weakness. We view it as the moment a human body finally breaks under an unbearable pressure. But the tears of the Creator operate on a completely different economy. He looks death in the eye at a rural grave. He looks destruction in the eye on a dusty ridge. He looks the curse of Eden in the eye in a midnight garden. He is a warhorse snorting at a cave. He is a rejected sovereign sobbing over a doomed capital. He is the sacrificial lamb screaming under the crushing weight of the world's rebellion. And in all 3 moments, humanity completely misreads him. The mourners at the tomb think he is just sad for his friend. The crowds on the road think he is overwhelmed by his coronation. The disciples in the garden do not think anything at all, because they are asleep in the dirt. No one sees what is actually happening. No one realizes that the water falling from his face, loud, violent wail. He cries outside a tomb in a small village. He cries on a hillside overlooking a gleaming city. He cries is the precursor to an ultimate violence against death itself. But this cosmic pattern leaves a very specific question hanging in the air. If the tears of Jesus were never about a passive, helpless sympathy, what does that mean for the tears you cry? But here is the part I keep coming back to. It is the 4 days of deafening silence before he arrived in Bethany, and the furious, trembling snorting of the warhorse when he finally stood in the dirt. We spend so much of our lives waiting in that 4-day window, wondering why the runner we sent came back empty-handed. We sit in the agonizing delay, watching the fever spike, smelling the decay set in, watching the heavy limestone wheel roll across the mouth of whatever future we thought we were going to have. If you are in a season where the delay feels like abandonment, where you have sent the desperate message and received nothing but dust and silence in return, you have to look closely at the tears he sheds when he finally shows up. His weeping is not an apology for being late. It is a physical declaration of war against the thing that is breaking you. When your world collapses, the religious reflexes of our culture often hand you a passive, sympathetic God. We are told that he weeps with us, which is meant to be a comfort, but often just feels like a cosmic shrug, dark dirt of an olive grove, sweating under the weight of an unseen crushing force. A friend, a city, a world. Each time, we are handed the image of a deity who sits quietly in the ashes of our grief, holding our hand while the cage remains permanently locked. That is not the God of the New Testament. We all have our Bethany moments, where the loss is intensely personal and the stone is heavy. We have our Jerusalem moments, where we watch people we love march blindly toward their own destruction, shouting for things that will eventually kill them. And we have those midnight garden moments, pressed face down in the cold soil, sweating under a crushing, invisible weight that the people closest to us sleep right through. In every one of those environments, his response is not a distant, clinical theological lesson. It is visceral. It is wet. It is loud. He is not weeping because he is helpless. He is weeping because he is furious at the architecture of death that has caused you this much pain. He hates the disease that took the person you loved. He hates the betrayal that shattered your trust. And he hates the unseen spiritual forces that are holding your mind hostage in the dark. The tears are the proof that he has not made peace with the curse. The silence of your 4 days is not an absence. It is the space being cleared for a weapon to be drawn. But to truly grasp, standing at the boundary line of human destruction, each time, he is looking at something that was never supposed to exist in the original garden, the scale of what those tears achieved. You cannot just look at the weeping. You have to look at what happened after the water hit the ground. The sun rises on a Sunday morning just outside Jerusalem. A different limestone wheel sits rolled away from a different cave. The burial cloths lie empty on a cold rock slab. A man steps out into the garden, breathing in the cool spring air. And this time, there is no water falling from his eyes. The weeping was not a surrender. It was a countdown. The message arrived from Bethany, and a warhorse snorted at the gates of a grave. A sister fell weeping in the dirt, and the silent tears of God fell to meet hers. A procession demanded a violent rebellion, and a king wailed aloud over a doomed city. A nation rejected the peace they were offered, and a sovereign's heart broke on the slope of a mountain. The crushing weight of Eden's curse descended, and the Creator screamed in the dark of an olive press. The executioners raised their wooden cross, and the author of life swallowed death whole. A tomb was sealed tight by an empire, and 3 days later, the cage was shattered from the inside out. 3 moments of weeping, 3 declarations of war. 1 empty grave. And each time, his reaction is completely misunderstood by the people standing right next to him. The tears of Jesus are not a collapse into grief. Your tears are not unseen. And your delay is not an abandonment. And may the God, who has never once stood passively by your pain, but who wept, wailed, and screamed in the dark to dismantle it, walk with you through your own 4 days of silence, and bring you out the other side carrying a life you could not have received any other way. If this opens something for you, subscribe, leave a comment, even 1 word helps. Share this with someone who is sitting in their own agonizing delay right now. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. They are a declaration of war against the way things are. To understand what he is actually doing in these 3 moments, you cannot just look at the water falling from his face. You have to look at what triggers it. And to do that, you have to go back, long before you see them high-pitched, rhythmic, shrieking, echoing off the rocks, mixing with the heavy, low weeping of 2 sisters who have just buried their brother, to that cave in Bethany, to the 4 days of agonizing silence that preceded it. Because before Jesus wept, he deliberately waited. The message arrives covered in the dust of the Judean road. A runner finds Jesus near the Jordan River with a frantic, 1-sentence plea from 2 sisters. Lord, the one you love is sick. If this were a standard hero's journey, the protagonist would drop everything. He would rush back up the steep, arid climb to Bethany. He does not. The text tells us that when Jesus heard Lazarus was sick, he stayed exactly where he was for 2 more days. He waits while the fever spikes. He waits while the breathing stops. He waits while the women wash the body, wrap the limbs in tight linen strips, and wedge a heavy limestone wheel across the mouth of the cave. This is the part of the story that haunts us when a midnight phone call brings bad news. We are deeply uncomfortable with the deliberate delays of God. We try to explain it away with platitudes about mysterious timing and higher purposes. But to the first century mind, the timeline of this delay carried a very specific, devastating weight. In ancient Jewish rabbinic tradition, there was a widespread belief about the mechanics of death. They believed the spirit of the deceased would hover over the body for exactly 3 days, hoping to return. It was a window of possibility. The smell of myrrh and sweat hangs in the dry air. A man stands in the center of the chaos, staring at the heavy stone. But on the 4th day, the physical reality of death became undeniable. The skin discolored. The flesh began to break down. The smell of decay set in. On the 4th day, the spirit departed forever. Hope ended on day 4. When Jesus finally walks into Bethany, Lazarus has been in the tomb for exactly 4 days. Martha even warns him about the stench. This is not an accident of geography. It is an architectural decision. If Jesus arrives on day 2 or day 3, he is a healer who barely made it in time. He is a prophet who can pull a spirit back into a fresh body. But by waiting until the 4th day, Jesus forces the situation past the boundary line of human possibility. He lets the clock run out completely so that when he acts, He is not just pushing back against sickness. He is establishing absolute dominion over death itself. The delay is not a lack of love. It is the staging ground for a revelation. He stands before the tomb knowing the victory is already secured. He is minutes away from shouting into the dark and watching a dead man walk out into the hot Judean sun. Logically, there is no reason for despair. He holds the keys to the cage. Yet, when he looks at Mary, weeping in the dirt, and the crowds wailing around her, the text says a profound physical reaction overtakes him. Our English translations usually soften his reaction with gentle words. They say he was deeply moved, rolled across the entrance of the tomb. He is covered in the dust of a 4-day journey he intentionally delayed, in spirit and troubled. But the eyewitness who wrote this gospel did not use a gentle word. He wrote something terrifying. John, chapter 11, verse 33. The text says, "When Jesus saw Mary weeping, and the crowds who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled." The English translation sounds like a sigh of heavy sadness. The Greek word sounds like a weapon being drawn. The word translated as deeply moved is the Greek enebremesato. It comes from the root embrimomai. It appears only 5 times in the New Testament, and its origin is completely detached from human sorrow. In classical Greek literature, this is the word used to describe the violent, physical snorting of a war horse just before it charges into the chaos of battle. It describes an animal trembling with adrenaline, flaring its nostrils, ready to strike. It means to bellow with rage, to be seized by an indignant, furious anger. Jesus is not weeping out of helpless sympathy. He is angry. He stands in the heat of the Judean afternoon. He hears the shrill, desperate cries of the mourners. He looks at the heavy limestone wheel, sealing his friend in the dark. He sees the absolute devastation that death, an alien, unnatural intruder, has wreaked upon the humans he formed from the dust. The tears that follow are not a quiet surrender. They are the physical manifestation of divine fury. And the specific word John uses for the tears, he knows exactly what he is about to do. He knows the man behind the stone will be breathing again in less than 5 minutes. Themselves proves the contrast. John 11:35. Jesus wept. The word John chooses here is dakruo. It means to shed tears silently, to let water fall from the eyes without making a sound. Everyone else in the scene is doing what the Greeks called klio loud, vocal, theatrical wailing. But Jesus does not join their noisy despair. He stands before the ultimate enemy of humanity, shuddering with the indignation of a warhorse. As silent, tears cut through the dust on his face. He is not mourning the inevitable end. He is preparing for combat. This is not a God who passively watches the tragedy of the human condition. It is a God who looks at the cage that holds his people, snorts in defiance, and steps into the ring to break it apart. He shouts a name. A dead man walks out of the dark in his grave clothes. The first blow against death lands. But this quiet, a furious, weeping in a rural graveyard is only the first strike. The timeline accelerates. The tension climbs. And a few days later, as he approaches the glittering walls of the Capitol, the tears change entirely. We call it the triumphal entry. It is a Sunday in early spring, and the road descending the Mount of Olives is choked. He knows the grave clothes are about to be unwrapped. And yet, he cries. It is the shortest verse in the English Bible. Jesus wept. With hundreds of thousands of pilgrims traveling for the Passover festival, the air is thick with the smell of crushed palm branches and the dry dust kicked up by thousands of sandals. You can hear the rhythmic chanting of the ancient psalms echoing across the Kidron Valley. As the crowds strip off their coats and lay them on the dirt road, they are demanding a political savior. They want a militant Messiah who will ride through the gates, slaughter the Roman garrison stationed in the Antonia fortress, and restore the political sovereignty of the nation. They are screaming, Hosanna, which in their cultural context was not a polite religious greeting, but a desperate, politically charged demand that literally translates to, save us right now. When we read this narrative in the modern West, we often strip it of its violent political tension. Jerusalem, in the 1st century, is a powder keg. The Roman Empire holds the city by the throat. And militant Jewish factions are constantly sparking rebellions that end with rows of wooden crosses. Jesus is not riding into a neutral religious capital. He is riding into a spiritual war zone, knowing perfectly well that the peace they are seeking is built on the edge of a sword. If feeling the historical weight of these moments, just 2 words, memorized by millions, printed on coffee mugs and stitched into Sunday school banners. We have domesticated the tears of Jesus, is dismantling the safe, predictable version of Jesus you grew up with. You're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the procession halts on the ridge. Jesus looks across the valley at the gleaming white limestone of the Temple Mount. Catching the afternoon sun, he sees the city that was designed to be the epicenter of God's presence on earth. The city that has historically rejected every warning ever sent to her. He knows exactly what this crowd is going to do in less than 5 days. When they realize he is not going to hand them a bloody revolution. More terribly, he is staring down the corridor of time at the inevitable consequence of their choices. He knows that in the year 70 AD, just 1 generation after this moment, the Roman 10th Legion will surround these exact walls, starve the inhabitants, and dismantle the sanctuary stone by stone until fire consumes everything they built. This is not a quiet moment of personal sorrow. It is the shattering grief of a sovereign watching his people walk over a cliff. And because the stakes have escalated from the tomb of a single friend to the destruction of an entire civilization, his physical reaction escalates with it. In the modern West, we treat them as a comforting theological signal. Most people assume this moment is just a demonstration of divine empathy. The Gospel of Luke uses a completely different word to describe what happens on that ridge, and it is a sound that must have stopped the chanting crowd dead in their tracks. Luke chapter 19, verse 41. The procession crests the hill. The crowd is shouting, "Hosanna!" The dust is thick in the afternoon heat. The energy of the mob is electric. And right in the middle of a political rally, Jesus breaks. The English text simply reads, "As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it." It sounds like a quiet moment of sorrow. It sounds like he shed a single, dignified tear for their ignorance. He does not. The word Luke uses here is the Greek kleio. It is the exact opposite of the silent, furious, dakruo he shed, in the dirt at the tomb of Lazarus. Kleio does not mean to shed a tear. It means to wail aloud, to sob uncontrollably, to cry out with vocal, piercing lamentation. This is the exact word used to describe the shrieking of professional mourners at ancient funerals. It is a loud, visceral, public unraveling. The crowd is chanting for a coronation. The king is wailing for a funeral. We think it means God feels our pain, that he is moved by the tragedy of human loss, and that he simply mourns alongside us. He looks at the heavy limestone blocks of the temple. He sees the peace they could have embraced. He sees the rebellion they will choose instead. He sees the Roman siege ramps pressing against the walls. He sees the barricades going up. He sees the starvation in the streets. He sees the fire consuming the sanctuary. This is not a polite sigh over a theological disagreement. It is the guttural, physical sobbing of a creator, watching his creation choose the sword that will destroy them. In Bethany, he wept silently because death was an alien intruder. In Jerusalem, he wails aloud because death is an invited guest. He knows the city will reject him. He knows that within days, the same mouths shouting for his crown will scream for his execution. His response is not vengeance. His response is a broken heart, poured out loudly over the roar of the crowd. The procession moves forward down the slope. The chanting swallows the wailing. The final week of Passover begins, but the timeline of his grief is not finished escalating. Because if the tomb of a friend drew silent tears, and the blindness of a city drew a loud wail, What happens when he is forced to look at the weight of the entire world?